John, give us the state of Nevada's economy today.
It's troubled. I mean, we're at some of the worst indicators. I think the worst indicators we've ever seen right now. This is a pretty deep recession. The question is going to be obviously how long it's going to last, and that really is a function of when we get a vaccine, because we're really essentially on virus time at this point. So the widespread application of the vaccine is going to be critical to indicate to us when we're going to come out of this and how quickly we're going to come out of it. We're not, and that, as you know, John, this doesn't look like the indicators or the scientists say probably won't be till next spring to get widespread use of the vaccine, unless something happens in the fall. I guess everything's open right now, but it's pretty deep. I mean, we ended June here in Las Vegas with an 18% unemployment rate. We lost 142,000 jobs between June of 2019 and June of 2020. So we have a lot of folks on unemployment right now, and they're in challenging times. We'll get through this, but it's going to take a lot of time, talent, treasure, and political will, as I like to say, to get through this. But it's unprecedented times for sure.
And when you say getting through it, is there more that Nevada and the federal government could be doing rather than just supporting, but maybe also creating jobs for people who feel like they can be in the workforce?
There's no doubt, the resources of the state of Nevada are pretty limited at this point because of all the unemployment and the downturn, right? Their tax revenues are really down. So it really depends on the federal government to step in with another tranche, as they say, of stimulus, whether that's $1 trillion, which the Republicans want to do, or $3 trillion, what the Democrats want to do. It's probably somewhere in the middle, but we're going to need another wave of assistance through unemployment claims for folks. That's $600 or some ratio of that $600, and direct assistance to state and local governments. And finally, a really important one that hasn't been talked about as much, but it's probably going to be talked about is, infrastructure assistance, how to invest in infrastructure, get construction workers back to work. We're not going to come out of this. We're in an economic pandemic too, right? Mm-hmm. And so the economy is too bad off to heal itself. It's going to need a lot of investment by the government. That's going to create huge amounts of debt for the government, for companies, and for individuals. But I don't know how we get out of this. Otherwise, it's just too deep for the economy to do it on its own, so to speak, or the private sector.
How important is extending that $600 a week payment under the CARES Act, under this new stimulus program?
It's very critical. I know there's a school of thought out there that says, some of these folks are making more on unemployment than were making at their jobs, and that's probably true in a percentage of the cases. But one of the reasons they can't get back to work is the virus is still spreading. So having these people go back to work or be forced to go back to work because they need the money, for example, could be even worse. And so I think the $600 is pretty critical. I kind of lean toward the Democratic plan of doing the $600 through the end of the year. I think just doing it for another 2 weeks, like the Republicans want to do, is that short-term kind of thing's not going to do much. But we have to understand that this is a very deep recession, and we need to have people not get kicked out of their homes and be able to go shop and those sorts of things. So that $600, I think, in this particular unprecedented time is very critical.
Are these eviction and foreclosure moratoriums and the extra payments, is that what's keeping the Las Vegas housing market and the housing markets across the country intact for now?
For now, yes. But, at some point, those end, right? I mean, landlords need to get paid and banks need to get paid their mortgages. And so that's a short-term fix. The dollars, the actual financial assistance, it's more of a longer-term investment, I think, in helping the economy recover and continue to stabilize as best we can.
Is the housing market, could that be the next shoe to drop in all of this if those go away, when those go away?
There are certain indicators out there that the housing market is going to see some troubles. And we're not going to see, we're in a weird spot right now, John, because there's a lot of the data that we're getting, we won't see the trends in the data until probably the end of the year, early next year. Because there's a lag between when the government produces data and other data providers produce data. But I think we're probably going to see a troubled housing market starting in the fall when we start seeing more data points. You're starting to hear some of the anecdotal information, some of the articles you read in the national business media on the housing market and the commercial real estate markets, for that matter, But yeah, I think it's going to get worse before it gets better in commercial, real estate, both residential and commercial.
When there is a vaccine, what will the economic recovery look like here in Las Vegas? Will it be like that, or will it be a lengthy process?
We think it's going to be lengthy. We're running a number of scenarios. A couple of months ago, we started running scenarios that I've talked about in different presentations I've done. Probably 2-3 months ago, we started running an 18-month, a 24-month, and a 36-month. Sort of a best case is 18, likely case 24, worst case 36. But it's not going to be a V-style recovery. I've called it, and this is the same thing we experienced, I think, during the Great Recession. It's the elongated Nike swoosh type recovery. It's much easier to turn off an economy than turn it back on again. And so there's some lags and other things. And we also are dependent on the health of the national economy, the regional economy. So all of these triggers have to be working have to be working at the same time. The global economy, the national economy, and the regional economy to help us come out of this.
Who are the biggest consumers of your data right now? Who is really coming to you and saying, I need to know the trends, I need to know what the future holds for us?
It's a broad range. Both we have quite a bit of state and local clients, municipal governments and state agencies that use our services and look at our data. There's also a number of private companies that we've done a lot of private briefings with and done private studies for that are wanting to know where we're headed. And I think most people are recognizing that right now we're kind of in a up and down situation. We're going to know better, as I mentioned earlier, into the winter and into next year. And so it's a broad range of clients that are used. I think the main thing, John, now that I'm seeing if there's any light at the end of this tunnel or a silver lining in the cloud is most everyone we're talking to in the private sector and in the public sector, our clients, are not, for lack of a better term, sticking their heads in the sand and think we're going to bounce out of this anytime quick. That there's a general recognition that the resort industry, the lodging hospitality industry, and that includes conventions and sports and all those, are not going to lead us out of this recession. It's going to take a lot longer than that. It's not going to be a bounce back, and it's going to require a lot of realistic thinking and a lot of public-private partnership work between the private sector and the public sector to work together to get us through this. And I think ultimately we're going to, not right now because it's politically, until maybe after the election, obviously, probably when the legislature starts again, we're going to have to seriously look at our tax structure and look at the vulnerabilities in our tax structure as well as the vulnerabilities in our economy.
When you say look at our tax structure, are you thinking new taxes, or are you thinking a repeal of current taxes? What?
No, I'm thinking revisiting our tax structure. I don't see new taxes, but there may be changes in tax rates, for example, or removal of certain deductions. Like that we're talking about at the special session with the mining industry. So I think there's going to be a lot more talk with that, working with for reforming our property tax structure, which has got some issues with it. It's not producing enough revenues with these 2%, 3%, and 8% caps and those sorts of things. So I think there's going to be a lot of discussion about that at the legislature. Where something is done, we don't know, but I don't think they're going to be able to sweep the tax structure and our vulnerabilities in the tax structure under the rug. And we're going to also have to get even more serious than we have been on what does it mean to have a resilient economy. We've been telling our clients that they should be phrasing this return, whatever you want to call it, as what do we need to do to reinvent the Las Vegas and Nevada economies and not recover them. So I don't think we want to go back to an economic structure that existed a year ago, last summer. I think we've learned again one more time that we're one of the most vulnerable economies in the country as a state and as a community when we have a downturn, whatever the cause of the downturn.
And how do we diversify our economy when our workforce isn't quite, has the skill sets that some of these other companies would be looking for?
It takes a long time, John, and we've made great strides since the Great Recession with the Las Vegas Global Economic Alliance and the Governor's Office of Economic Development. It's just going to take more time. We were making progress, and now this thing just kicked us, so to speak, knocked us down, and so we're going to have to rebuild, and we're going to have to accept that it's going to take a long time to get to an economy that's at least more resilient, less vulnerable than we have today, and huge amounts, in my opinion, of investments, as I said earlier, of time, talent, treasure, and political will for an extended period of time.
Anything else, 5 months into this now, anything else surprise you, either for better or for worse?
Yeah, I was kind of hoping that and this is part of what the scientists are trying to figure out. They're feeling their way through this. Remember, there was discussion that once it got warm, the virus would go away, and the heat would kill the virus. Well, that hasn't proven to be true. I think what surprised me is how widespread the virus is and how it spreads, how quickly it spreads, and that's really surprising. The other thing that surprised me that's a bit disconcerting, and we've got it under control right now, and I hate to say this, but how poorly human beings behaved when we first opened, how our tourists behaved, without wearing masks in the casinos, with pool parties like it was, the summer of 2019 again. And so that set us back as well. Now, I think we're getting a better handle on that now. But it's just like did not expect this virus to spread so quickly, and that human beings particularly our tourists, not so much our residents, they've been acting pretty responsible, I think, acted so irresponsibly after the first opening. After we had the first shutdown and then the reopening, that caused this huge wave. It made us one of these national hotspots here in Southern Nevada.
John, great conversation, and I'm sure we're going to want to check in with you again.
Call me anytime. Thank you, and take care and be safe, okay?
I will.